Joining me now, France 24's chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Hello to you, Rob. What is the message that the Ukrainian defense minister is giving to his country's allies?
Well, you mentioned there on artillery. I think that's one of the central messages, and artillery shells in particular. The need for artillery shells, he said, is very real and pressing. And the reason for that is that Russia has stepped up its production of artillery shells and is out using artillery shells on the front line. Is out using them against Ukraine by at least 2 to 1. At the moment, for instance, if Russia, on average, is spending across that 1,000-kilometer front line something like 15,000 shells a day, at its most, Ukraine can get between 5,000 and 8,000 shells a day. In other words, Russia is using more than two times as many shells a day, and that is putting Ukraine under immense pressure. That's one of the reasons why Russia's been able to go on the offensive again along that front line, whereas in the summer, when Ukraine was probably at least achieving parity in production of artillery shells and use of artillery shells, it was Ukraine that was on the offensive. The European Union has said it will provide Ukraine with 1 million shells by the spring. By the end of last year, it produced just 300,000. Apparently now, here we are at the end of January, that's about 480,000 shells are being sent to Ukraine. It's not enough. That's still 500,000 that need to produce by the springtime. Even that will not be enough. So that's why it's so urgent for the Ukrainians. And in particular, they need the 155 millimeter shells that are used with Western modern artillery systems, not the old Soviet-style ones. So those are the priorities that the defense minister, Mr. Umierov, was stressing in that meeting yesterday.
And there is talk of Ukraine fatigue in the West, offering the support, very expensive for governments. What are Ukraine's allies doing to try and help?
Well, you're right. As we all know, there's a $60 billion program of arms spending held up in Congress at the moment. In the European Union, a $50 billion financial package being held up by Hungary at the moment. If those were to go through, it would certainly change the picture for Ukraine. The European Union is doing its part. It's passed a legislation for an Act in Support of Ammunition program, ASAP, which is to provide 500 million euros worth of shells to Ukraine on a regular annual basis. But the problem is, they're up against Russia, which is really ramping up its own production by 68% in the coming year. That'll make Russian military spending something like 6.8% of GDP. That's a really tall order for the European Union. What we heard at that meeting on Thursday is that in this particular group, the artillery coalition, which is led by France and the United States, set up to try and coordinate the effort to provide Ukraine with the artillery and the artillery shells and so on that we've just been talking about. They, this year, under French leadership, aim to provide Ukraine with 78 howitzer systems, the Caesar howitzer system, which has proven to be extremely effective in Ukraine, very versatile, very agile, very accurate, and able to get away from its firing position very quickly, which makes it hard to hit if you're a Russian artilleryman firing back. 78 of those over the course of the year, 6 of those to be bought by Ukraine itself, 12 to be provided with French spending, and the remaining 60 by other members of that coalition that I've just been talking about. It's practical help of the kind that Ukraine desperately needs at the moment.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Rob Parsons, our chief foreign editor.